Ladies and gentlemen, at least one of these individuals I met earlier this year at the Wall Street Project as Diversity Inc. co-sponsored one of our events with Reverend Jackson. We're going to hear all about Diversity Inc., especially now in the context of what's going on with Starbucks and elsewhere. Joining us now, the CEO of Diversity Inc., Luke Visconti, and the COO of Diversity Inc., Carolynn Jones. Welcome to you both. How are you?
Doing okay.
Fine. Good to see you here. Luke, tell us about Diversity Inc., first of all, and how it kind of came to be.
Well, can I back up a little bit and tell you how I got into diversity?
Sure.
Better story.
Okay.
So I was a Navy pilot, and I volunteered for recruiting duty because I wanted to come back to the United States. And I was asked to be the minority officer recruiter for my district. And as I was introducing myself in the office, there was another pilot in the office named Tony Cato, who's black.
Uh-huh.
And he asked me what I was going to be doing. And when I told him, he leaned back in his chair and said, well, I guess you were the best they could do. And so I said, gee, thanks a bunch, Tony. and so he said, he laughed. He goes, I guess that wasn't very kind, but would you like my help? And so I thought to myself, that's really an awesome offer because he didn't need to help me. So I said yes. And in our travels, he told me about ways he had been discriminated against and things that had happened to him in his life. Now, Tony's a Naval Academy graduate, an athlete, a scholar. He's a great husband. He's an awesome father. He's everything that I would find credible in a man. And he was a great pilot, great aviator. And so I would at first deny him and say, oh, come on, Tony, they couldn't have meant it that way. Or, you're thinking too much into the situation, until finally he broke through to me and I realized it was me who wasn't seeing things clearly, that I was denying this man his own experiences. I was saying, no, what you experienced wasn't what you experienced. And I thought to myself, what would I think gave me that power or that ability to tell this man that he was wrong about what he experienced? And I saw that I wasn't seeing things very clearly. And that was in 1987.
Okay.
So I went into publishing, and then I went out of publishing and I started my own company and then launched this in 1997, Diversity Inc.
Carolynn, from your perspective, what has been Diversity Inc.'s role, and what have been some of its successes?
Well, I would say the first success is that Luke was probably the first white guy to tell it like it is.
Okay.
And the credibility, so his background, being in the Navy, his publishing career, being one of the top salespeople at Fortune, people would listen to him. More importantly, white men would listen to him. And so giving this subject the credibility that it needed at the top, I think would probably be the first accomplishment. And then I would say bringing other people in. So you'll hear Luke, I'm sure at some point, talk about Black women and how they've supported Diversity Inc. And so giving Black women the platform and showing these white men that they can trust them and that there are good relationships there that things will be accomplished from. I think those would be the two things that I would say have been our greatest accomplishments at Diversity Inc.
So, Luke, is really more than a publication. You all kind of actually do a lot of diversity awareness and sensitivity training, don't you?
Not training, it's awareness. We're a news kind of site. And by the way, we do. So in other words, I've donated $2 million. I have my own 501c3, and we support scholarships. We don't do the scholarships. We support schools that administer scholarships for poor kids. So I was a trustee of Bennett College for 10 years.
Okay.
I was on Reverend Jackson's steering committee for Wall Street Project for 5.
Okay.
So we do things. It's a philosophy.
Yeah. So as a media organization, Carolynn, you all are able to inform businesses and entities, institutions, how to be more diversely aware.
That's kind of high. I'm gonna kind of
okay, that's fine.
I would say that we are not scared to tell the truth. I think that's where you have to start. And with no outside investors, nobody is editing our comments.
Right.
And so, like in the case of Starbucks, a lot of people will say, oh, well, he was emotional on TV, Kevin Johnson, the current CEO, and he didn't mean it. Yeah. But we're like, okay, Kevin, you're emotional, you cry, but here's what's wrong with all of this. And that's the difference between someone who has somebody who will pick up the phone and say, you're not going to run that on the homepage today, versus us, where Luke's like, why aren't you running that on the homepage today? So it's very different in how we do things versus how people traditionally do them.
How much though does the science come in? I mean, there is a science and a study when it comes to diversity awareness. Luke, did the two of you educate yourselves about that? Does that type of science inform how you cover stories?
I think that the basis or the cornerstone of the whole business is the top 50 list, which is derived by numbers. We offer a survey, companies fill it out, and we analyze the numbers, and we look at 4 levels of management, top 10% people paid in the company, total workforce versus management workforce, all of the different aspects, supplier diversity, everything that a company can do, because I can then tell you by outcome, not by theory, not by public relations, but by outcome, how well you've done in treating people fairly. That's what it really boils down to, is are you treating people fairly?
Well, Diversity Inc. with us, folks, the website, DiversityInc.com. And folks, I subscribe to their emails and newsletters. A lot of really important, as they say, and concrete information. This is not about feeling, okay? So Andrew and I did a little research on Starbucks. They asked me to come on MSNBC and talk about Starbucks, and what I found, for example, and you all let me know if you got any other information, but not what we found is what we weren't able to find, and that is that while Starbucks will boast about having a very ethnically diverse board and have diverse baristas, paying them low costs, they will not release information on how many African-American women or people of color licensees they have, because it's not a franchise. They will not release information on how many African-American women of color managers they have. So that's a problem, right?
I would say it's a problem, and I think if you look at who reports to the CEO, which is available on the website, and you take a look at the pictures, who's growing the coffee? Starbucks is not part of fair trade. Who's growing the coffee? None of them are represented on the people reporting to the CEO. Nobody, not a single Latino.
And so they're not a part of fair trade.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
In fact, they conspicuously stayed out of it. So there's fairness issues all along the way.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, you have a problem. The problem is you're calling the police on black people in your stores. That's a problem. The problem is the police respond. If I was a cop showing up at that store in Philadelphia, I'd arrested the manager. So what are you calling me for? You clearly got something wrong with you.
Right.
So I mean, but I looking at this, who would tell the CEO, don't do that, don't say that, let me explain to you what's going on here? And there's nobody there. There's nobody there.
Right. Yeah. They all think that you have a predominantly white male leadership team, and so nobody is saying, well, wait a minute, my experience was this, or the people that report to me have shared these stories with me. Maybe there's a different way we could go about that. But when there's a possibility that all the experience is the same, nobody thinks that there was anything wrong with what happened. And when Kevin was on CNN with Don Lemon, he actually said, or attempted to defend the manager. And you don't know her. You don't know her heart. You don't know her intent. How could you say she didn't mean it, or she didn't, or she's not a bad person? Just stick to the facts. It was wrong. The cop should not have been called. Stick to the facts.
It was also, quite frankly, a little gray as to whether she was fired.
No, it is gray. Nobody knows.
Because it seems to me the latest I heard, the bottom line was they just mutually parted ways. Like, we in a relationship and we just gonna end the relationship. Right. No, that's not.
Me, the billionaire, is gonna part with you, the person making $12 an hour as a manager of a store. That's not equal.
Yeah.
And there is a point though. If I were the store manager and she got fired, I'd sue Starbucks, because where's the policy telling me what to do?
That's true.
You're firing me for doing something. I wasn't trained to understand how to handle the circumstance. I handled it wrong, but who's my boss? You put me here. What was the training? And that seems to be a consistent problem.
Luke Visconti, Carolynn Johnson, the CEO and COO respectively of DiversityInc.com. So then there's this training. I don't even think it's every store. It's one afternoon. I don't need to tell you all, and I'm somebody who has led diversity training, as a matter of fact. I got in an argument with a caller on my show this morning who, we have people, I was talking about another police killing, the Muslim immigrant sister, Sister Shukri Ali Saeed down in Georgia, mental health issue, family calls police Saturday night, police show up and kill her. So we'll get into the police in a minute because, the police overreact all the time. Caller calls in and says, what about the police trying to justify the police get killed. And I was explaining to him, I've done diversity, awareness, sensitivity training in a police academy. No, you haven't. You couldn't have done that. But I've actually done that. Led it. When Starbucks talks about doing this, I know from my own experience, what they're saying they're going to do is not enough.
How can it be? Couldn't possibly be. And I gave this example in my column. If they had an issue with the temperature of the milk that you customers put into the coffee, it would take them longer than 6 weeks to study it and roll out a solution.
Yeah.
It just would.
Yeah.
So now we're going to expect to believe that a guy who has no real connection, the CEO has nothing I could find online, no real connection. He was at Microsoft for 16 years. Microsoft has a horrible reputation for promoting blacks and Latinos and women inside the company. So he's there 16 years. He goes to Juniper Networks. Juniper Networks currently right now on their website, out of the 10 people reporting to the CEO, not a single woman, not a single black man, not a single Latino. I mean, come on. He has no real experience in this, and in 6 weeks he's going to be the nation's expert to roll this out to 8,000 stores for a half-a-day training. How can that be?
Seems to me this was a sort of a PR damage control stunt.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, again, not having the right counsel, not having the right people around you. Because if he had the right people around him, they could have made suggestions on, you don't start with unconscious bias training at the stores. I think our article said you don't shut down the stores, you shut down headquarters, because that's where the problem is.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Luke's asked the white guy column.
Up here at the top.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll make this personal.
Come on.
The reason I'm a successful businessman is not that I'm the brightest guy you ever met. I'm not. I surrounded myself with really good people who could tell me, hey, think about this, think about this. And Carolyn is my succession plan. So you look, I hired her, 14 years ago now?
15 in 4 months.
So
thanks, LinkedIn.
In 15 years, I mean, she's taught me a lot about life, and I've been open to listen. I mean, I think that was important.
Yeah, that makes all difference. Now, so this one afternoon thing, you're right, it should start at the headquarters, but I don't see how even you address the issue of the stores in one afternoon. This is an ongoing,
right.
I mean, diversity, I'll be honest with you, I think companies should treat diversity training like AA meetings in 2018. I'm serious. I mean, it has to be ongoing.
Yeah.
Yes.
If at least annually,
right.
Doctors and lawyers have to go and take recertification classes, CLE courses, all that kind of stuff every year. And I think that at this hour, looking at everything we're looking at, and this is not only happening at Starbucks, we know what happened at the Waffle House with Chiquisha Clemens, that this is something that corporations need to be doing on at least an annual basis.
I think, at the very least, because it's a subject that has so many layers and there's so much involved with it.
Right.
And for white people, they have to discard a lot of bad information that they've been programmed with in their heads. So you can't strip that away in 6 months. You can't strip that away even once a year. It has to be an ongoing process of education and understanding. And the reason you do that, if you're a business person, is profits. You will develop better connections with people, better understandings. You will make less mistakes, less failures. You won't get into the press this way. That's why you do this. You have Starbucks management has a responsibility to the shareholders.
Yeah.
That's why you do this, not to be a nice guy. I mean, that's a side benefit.
Now, isn't there one black female executive at Starbucks? Is she a COO? What is she?
Yeah, she's a COO and a division president.
Okay, okay. Does she have any weight or gravity in the company? Do we know?
Who knows?
Well, who knows? But I, as a black woman, people have asked me often, you've been at DiversityInc for a really long time. I know you've had opportunities to leave. Why didn't you? And that's because I just because I have a lot of freedom to do what I want. But
of course, right.
But second, I sometimes just get tired of when things get broken or go wrong, that toss it to a black woman and let her fix it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
she got there in 2017. She's
Yeah.
going to fix decades of issues with the culture.
Right,
I mean,
right.
in 2015,
Right,
Schultz
right.
had the baristas write Race Matters on coffee cups. I mean, like, this is not something that just happened with Kevin Johnson. This company does not care about diversity.
Yeah.
They don't care about how the people that even work for them. Let's just stop thinking about their customers for a second. Did it ever occur to him that people that are serving his product have had the same experience in somebody else's retail store? And so you're talking about issues with culture, great issues with leadership accountability or lack thereof. And that's what their problem is.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and they just better hope Amazon doesn't find a way to take them out. Because they're really going to have a problem. I'm just saying.
Well, but what's interesting, and I've been kind of boning up on this, those of us who've been civil rights activists and freedom fighters over the years have always had our finger on the trigger when it's time to call for a boycott. And people reflexively said, boycott, just like, the NFL piece. And I was involved in that as well, although I didn't say boycott, nor did I say boycott Starbucks. And I'm going to tell you why. I've grown close to a regular guest of mine, Angelo Carolynn, who got Glenn Beck off of Fox. And, he's been looking into it and talking about the ineffectiveness of boycotts per se, because that creates a scientifically measurable bottom line. But when you damage a brand, that makes the company more anxious and more fearful because you can't measure that. And I doubt Starbucks wants to be, maybe they do, I doubt they want to be associated and defined by this incident. Right. I mean, why would you? And in full disclosure, we had a similar situation at Sirius XM with Bannon. And I said here on the air, and I said in private, I said, this is going to hurt the brand, having this clown on the radio.
Right.
And ultimately, that took care of itself. But, it seems to me, knowing what companies now know about brand, I had the president of NAACP on last week, Denny's. Had to boycott Denny's, but guess what? Not as many people are going to go in Denny's anymore. Denny's, those incidents define Denny's, and this incident is in danger of defining Starbucks.
Especially since it's the cool coffee shop and people like to go there and hang out. If it's not cool anymore, there goes your brand.
Right. And then
their stock has been going sideways for 3 years, so they got to be concerned.
There's a so Luke talked about being on the board of trustees at Bennett College, and I actually took his seat when he rotated off. So
okay.
And then I'm also on the national board of directors for Inroads.
Okay.
And we talk a lot to the students about reputation and how a company treats their employees, how a company responds in situations like this. And so this is, it's definitely going to hurt their brand. They're not going to, you think that one day when stores close is going to hurt them. If we keep talking about this and not kind of like forgetting when things like quiet down like we usually do.
And go on to the next thing.
Exactly. If we keep
and
talking
don't actually
about
see
it.
through.
Exactly. We keep talking about it, you hurt them at the cash register.
Yeah.
And if you educate your young people, you will hurt them with their talent pipeline. So until they fix it and treat people better, you have to keep talking about it.
I physically, and I was moving through the airport yesterday, wanted some tea. I don't drink coffee anyway. I physically cannot go in Starbucks anymore. Now, I'm not saying that everybody go boycott Starbucks just for the reasons I've said. I'm saying you have to make your decision, but I'm letting Starbucks know that I will never enter a Starbucks again. I just, because of the way my makeup is, I can't go in the store. Same thing with Denny's. Can't go in Denny's. I can't watch, I don't even know if it's still on anymore, Mike and Mike on ESPN. I remember when one of the Mikes called Dr. King Martin Luther King.
Right.
And I can't,
No.
I just cannot turn it on.
Right.
So I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that way. And I'll be doggone if I'm going to Waffle House again either. So, these companies are going to have to do a lot for me as a consumer to make me physically able to give them my money again.
Well, where does that start? Like, where should they start? Like, in order to begin that process?
Well, first of all, let me say, I want to talk about where we start. And all the organizations that have agreed to consult me part of diversity training, I respect all of them. But see, we've lost our way in terms of movement and accountability. It shouldn't be a reflex where as soon as a company is a bad actor and they call to do their own damage control, then we run to go help out.
Right.
I believe in Dr. King's principles and the steps being collection of the evidence, negotiation, and direct action. So we should be demanding that evidence. All of the civil rights organizations and those of us who are conscious media. Why can't this show or Diversity Inc. say, we want your information on diversity in terms of managers and diversity in terms of licensees? That's a story in itself. Well, we're not going to give it to you. So if we got to go to FOIA to get that, then there's a problem. And see, we're negotiating trying to get that information. Then we get to the point of direct action where we decide, people make a conscious decision. Well, maybe we don't want to go in Starbucks anymore.
We got a request from Papa John's to help them, and I said, no, we're not going to do it.
Okay,
and
good.
Well, we have money. Nope. I'm not going to have that logo on my website, number one. I'm not going to have it.
Right.
You know, but at a certain point, you've got to say, well, why don't you do something first and then give me a call when you're ready?
Yeah.
You know, because you're not ready yet.
Right.
And I think though the damage that can be done, because guess what? I measure what stories do well on my website. I'm going back to that Starbucks well as often as I can. so it's kind of like you're living under the microscope now.
But that says something. It says if that story's doing well, that's a good sign that people are thinking.
Yes.
They're being thoughtful about. Coffee's too doggone expensive anyway. And I'm gonna be honest with you. See, I said this in my speech, and I think the more I say this, the more trouble they're in. This was about those men sitting in there without buying something. People go in Starbucks every day, white folks, for 8 hours with their laptop, don't have no office, and use up that free internet, and they may get one cup of coffee. They ain't buying a cup of coffee every hour. That high coffee price is underwriting that free internet for whoever wants to come use it. So what you all are doing is paying for some coffee, for some internet that they only want a certain type of person to use. That's a wrap.
And
it's
the
not
props
worth it.
sitting around the Starbucks store, the props, the woman with the laptop, they have to be a certain hue in order to be attractive for Starbucks to want them. They're props. And so you look at this and say, two black men sitting talking business, waiting for a meeting, not the right kind of props. That's what they're telling you.
Now,
call the police.
That is interesting. If you all ought to think about those of you who may be being used as props that you don't realize. Why be a prop? I mean, you're still helping them out. The police. There are two culprits in this, including the police, because the police often can diffuse situations if they choose to. They could have diffused that, and there could have been no arrest, couldn't they?
Absolutely.
Yes. If the police had taken a few minutes to talk to those two men, I listened to them. I watched the video. They seemed like very nice young men, and I think that would have come across almost immediately. And these aren't people who are, look, no business needs to have people making a problem in their store. But those two men were very nice men. They were doing like the ladies at the golf course. They were very nice ladies.
Now that's your lead story. I want to get to that in a minute, but you want to say something about the police first?
Not only were the two young men calm, but the other patrons were saying, why are they doing this? They didn't do anything wrong. And they even chose to ignore that. So they were going to get arrested no matter what, because in my opinion, they were young and black. Yeah, no question about it. We the cop, the chief of police ultimately apologized because he got lit up. But he shouldn't have said that.
No, he shouldn't have.
He shouldn't have. This was not the kind of situation that those gentlemen needed to be removed. It was just absurd. And then the next day you had someone who wasn't given a bathroom key. There's this thing of they have everything. You put blank while black, driving while black, walking while black, not doing anything while black. I think my new thing is going to be not belonging while black, because it seems like the places that we go, there's this feeling we don't belong there. And I'll be honest with you, I went through it at the airport. Yes, I go to the airport all the time. I don't belong in the line to get on a plane, and therefore I must not know what I'm doing. So when somebody singles me out and says over and over again, "Did you take your laptop out? Did you take off your belt?" I already did that. Don't ask anybody else that, just me, because I can't be flying. We ain't got no money to fly and go nowhere. We can't go nowhere. What you doing in this airport? And you know what I'm saying? Then I get off the plane, and in LaGuardia, you got to take the shuttle to your Uber or your car service. Where you going? You don't have no car picking you up. You know, I had to answer a million questions once I got there. So, you know, there's this perception we just don't belong anywhere we're supposed to be. And that's part of the problem. The golf course now. Tell us, a lot of people have, and again, it's one thing after the other. If we did nothing, and we're going to talk about that in a minute because I love Diversity Inc. I'm not just saying that because y'all, I've always followed you. I have been a subscriber and gotten your email updates every day for years. We need to highlight these stories every day. If we did nothing else, we could give Diversity, make this happen, Andrew. We could give Diversity Inc. their own channel. And they would have 24, I'm serious. They wouldn't even have to work hard.
I'm gonna follow up with you.
Not even, they wouldn't even have to work hard. They would have 24-hour coverage on CNN on just these kind of stories alone. Am I lying?
You could do it.
Yep.
You could definitely
Literally.
do it.
And they wouldn't even have to take I could say, okay, y'all go take this channel today. They could immediately put content on the air, and it would be on there 24 hours a day.
And there's all sorts of vertical channels. I'll give you an example about props.
Okay.
Carolyn came to me and told me she was stopped in the parking lot of a Target in Clark, New Jersey. And my first reaction was, what are you doing in Clark? Because black people don't go to Clark.
Right.
Because the cops arrest you immediately. Right. Black people cross that border into Clark, they get pulled over.
That's my number one problem. I don't care. I'll go where I want.
Not belonging while black.
So she's driving a, I don't know, some extremely long 7 million series BMW. I mean,
Lord
so
have
big.
Mercy.
And, you know, she's not
That's
quite
your
5
second
foot.
crime right there.
Yeah. So you know, her husband, who's a big fireman, can sit with his legs straight out in the back seat. So that's how, you know. So she's driving out of the parking lot.
I think I would have called the police on y'all.
Cops surrounded her. Whose car is that? And she says, "You already ran the damn plate. You know exactly whose car this is. Now either arrest me or get out of my way."
Said that?
She said
to the
that.
police?
It's just, she tells me, "I'm going. You're gonna get yourself shot." Like, you know, I'm like a dad. I'm getting all afraid of him. Like, please don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I don't have patience. I don't.
Now you know you have. For all the boys and girls watching, this is not the behavior or reaction that is recommended by the National Black Police Association pamphlet on what to do when stopped by the police. Do not do.
Please don't do that anymore.
You know, keep both hands on the steering wheel and try to be quiet.
You know,
but I get it.
Here's the thing. I have very good intuition.
Okay.
I follow my gut. And this was just some little young punk cop. I mean, I'm sorry to say it that way, who just didn't have anything better to do, and we were going to dance. Okay. No, and then the days you have sometimes, it's like, you had a bad day, but I had one too. Let's go. Now, I agree with you. I do have some issues. I'm taking anger management classes.
Really?
But sometimes you just had enough. So I agree. There are times where you don't want to end up in jail or have people reading your obituary, right? Yeah. You don't want to do that. But then sometimes, you know what? You just had enough.
You remind me of a classmate I had in college, and when we would demonstrate and commit civil disobedience and get arrested, the police would want to be brutal, but when they saw her, they would leave us alone. It was something about her. They didn't want to put their hands on her. But then we saw what these cops did with Chakisha Clemens down to Waffle House.
Yeah.
She ends up unclothed. And if you go back and look, I've watched the video. I saw it the first time. You look at it the second time, Luke, they put their hands, those 3 white cops put their hands all over every body part of that black woman. So this is the kind of stuff that we need to cover and deal with. Folks, go to DiversityInc.com. Now, this is the way it works. I'm not saying this to brag, but this is what I want to do. And again, I'm not just saying this because y'all here. I've always admired the work you've done, and it is concrete, factual, it's not fake news, concrete, factual reporting on things. We used to do a segment when I was on in the evening called the Evening News, not news. And we would cover stories like this, and a lot of our sources were Diversity Inc. What I want to do is I would like to figure out a way for you to join our show on a regular basis. Now, what that has always led to historically, I'm like Cosby in another way, in the sense that.
All right, come on, clean that up. I need more.
No, I'm explaining. I'm going to explain it. Several shows, a lot of shows spun off from the Cosby Show.
Okay, got it.
Shows have spun off from Make It Plain, and you all need to be heard. Like I said, you all could have a channel dealing with these stories. People you know, like again, the lead story is about the women they were kicked out of the golf course. They were members of the golf club.
And rudely. I mean,
this
if
was
you
in
watch
Pennsylvania.
the video, it was just rude.
Yeah. And so, you know, these things, these indiscretions go on all day. One day I'm just going to have and I haven't even done this yet, but I want to have people call in and just share. Like during this Me Too movement, we've had segments where women have called in to share their stories, either out front or anonymously. We want you all to share your stories about microaggression and discrimination and what happened to those young men in Starbucks happens every single day. So I want to invite you all to do that, and we'll work out all those details.
Love to do it.
Yeah.
And I know you all didn't come in here for that. You didn't ask for that, but that's something I'm offering.
Yeah.
Because again, we could have a DNN, Diversity News Network, 24/7, because this stuff happens all of the time.
All the time.
Yeah, and I think we talk about the things that are just disgraceful on our website, but we also on the other side talk about the good things that are happening in this space and in corporate, right? So the companies that participate in our DiversityInc Top 50 list, we're actually announcing the companies that earned a spot on the list this year, May 1, right? Right here in New York at Cipriani on Wall Street. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about at that event, and also an event we're having on October 2nd, the first event of its kind for us, talking about women of color and their allies. And it's kind of interesting when we were thinking about this because, Luke is like somebody I can like say, hey, Luke, you got a second? I can email him. And he's always a phone call away, right? But when you unpack that professionally, he's a sponsor, he's a mentor, he's a coach, depending on what's going on. And I don't think people see relationships like that, right?
No.
Yeah. They're rare.
Yeah.
And, I had the honor of walking her down the aisle when she got married because her dad has post-traumatic stress from Vietnam. And,
wow.
He's a great guy, and I love him, but she needed a rock to be there on that day, and I got the opportunity to be that rock, and I'm the godfather of her oldest child, her daughter.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
And so it's a great relationship in terms of. We talk about these things all the time, and we parse them and beat them up and put them back together again and see what it looks like. And it's very interesting to me. It's a constant evolution of knowledge and learning.
Well, and we should have human relations like that.
Right.
That's really
we should.
That's really what it ought to be.
It's a great thing to have.
We should, but I think more than just having them, I think we have to be comfortable showing people what they look like, right? So, I mean, having like one of those vulnerable moments, we'll have one of those. We'll have one of those together. I'm 38 years old. I'm a young woman, so perception is, well, wait a minute. What is she doing with him? Like, what's going on there? And so sometimes, at work, some women don't want to be discredited in talking about like real healthy relationships that are not sexual, that are not romantic. I think your grandmother said, every relationship, every woman that you interact with, it's not going to be romantic. It's not going to be sexual. Some women just want you to stand with them and support them.
Yeah.
Agape love.
Yeah.
And
as
Dr. King would say.
And so I think we have to be comfortable being honest about the fact that these relationships exist and showing people what they look like. That's what the event on October 2nd is about.
Well, the other thing too is, we know as African Americans, we're over sexualized as it is. So, whenever we work in the same workspace, we have to be having sex with somebody, or somebody's having sex, and that's a stereotype that's inappropriate. And I've been in that position too. Even here at this company, I have been literally accused of things I've never done, and I know it's just because I'm black. I've been put in that very, very situation. So this now the May 1st event is.
That's the annual DiversityInc Top 50 announcement.
New Top 50 list.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, that's this. When is that? That's
tomorrow.
Tomorrow's May 1st.
Yes.
Lord, it's the month. I'm still in January, y'all, because it's 30 degrees outside in New York.
I know, it's freezing.
So tomorrow you're going to announce the new Top 50.
Yes.
We have Paul Butler speaking at lunch, and
Yep.
I'm sure you've read Chokehold, but on the video, speaking of where you're not supposed to be, he has a great story. He tells a story about walking down his block in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
and being accosted by the police and sitting on his front porch and refusing to give them ID. Refusing to do it. This is a man who went to Yale, Harvard Law School, was a prosecutor, and he's being accosted by the police. And he did play cat and mouse with them for some time, but it's an interesting video to watch.
So I want to just ask this. So I'm looking at the top 50 from last year. How much of this changes this year?
It changes a bit. There's new companies that apply, so new companies get onto the list. And what we did for the first time this year is we've retired our prior number ones. So Ernst & Young was number one last year. They're going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And we're going to have that frees up 4 spots. It was.
Yep.
From companies that were previously number 1 and are going to be, and they're going to be held above the list. Now they still have to qualify every year. We made sure that they knew that that wasn't a pass to stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
So they have to qualify, and they have to qualify, and we give them a remedial 3 years in the event of a merger or acquisition. And we set up a bunch of rules which we got everybody to agree to, and so you'll see some turnover this year on the list quite a bit.
Yep. And you'll also see, which I'm happy and scared about all at the same time, major tech companies that didn't participate like in the past, or in any diversity initiative that you could put your hand on.
So when you say apply, what does that mean?
So
we send out, it's an open call. Any company with more than 5,000 employees can fill out the survey. It's a very extensive survey. We think it takes between 40 and 60 hours to fill it out.
250 questions.
And so they send us the data, and then we shake it out using math and rank everybody by mathematical accomplishments. And so that we can give you a rank where we know that the companies ranked 1 through 10 are much better than the companies ranked 20 to 30, 30 to 40, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the new list for this year. And the new tech company that Carolynn's talking about, it'll be very interesting to see the reaction, because it doesn't get much bigger than these guys.
So you all don't want to spill the beans and tell us what they
River in Brazil.
So look, I put on the screen, those of you watching on our stream can see the 2017 top 50.
Yes.
I noticed Wells Fargo was on there.
Yes.
Now, I had some folk on the other day who was still trying to hold Wells Fargo accountable, though. They might dispute that.
Wells Fargo has been through a real mix master of trouble in the last few years. And I think it's an interesting company, because they were a $1 billion bank before the subprime crisis. They were, in essence, forced to acquire Wachovia. People don't remember that, but that was another $1 billion bank. So that's $2 billion. Now they're a $3 billion bank, enormous bank that has grown because of consumer power. And things got out of control in a couple of areas, and they're busy trying to rectify it. Now, and I've said this about many companies who are on our list that get in trouble for one reason or another. And it was actually a senior vice president of communications at Wells Fargo that told me this. He said, "Would you give me that 2% of any population will willfully do something wrong today?" And I said, "I think you're being generous. It's higher than that." He said, "Well, we have 250,000 people working here. I've got to worry about thousands of people this week doing something wrong on purpose." So we have to look at things and say, if a company's trying and they're putting themselves out there, including their wallet, and they're doing things in the community that are demonstrably and measurably good, and they get into trouble, do we throw all of that out? And I think the difference between, for example, Wells Fargo and Starbucks is you could go back and research, and you could see where they've been doing good demonstrably and spending the money and showing up in places.
Supporting HBCUs, helping poor people with
even
apps.
Locally. I was the primary sponsor of a group in New Jersey that is court-appointed special advocates. These advocates who are volunteers manage the case of a child in foster care, and it may be the child's only single note of consistency in their young lives. And so I sponsored it. So did Wells Fargo, the local people at Wells Fargo.
Okay.
I mean, it's that kind of organization.
Okay.
And they've got to work their way through these problems.
But I guess just to be clear, though, that while they may pass your scrutiny, that doesn't give anybody an excuse not to keep working.
Be vigilant
toward diversity, among other things, and fairness. So that's important. DiversityInc.com. Offline, we'll work out the details. I want to get you all back in here on a regular basis. This young lady, Emily, who just walked in, is coming in to tell me our time is up. This has been great. I didn't plan to go this long, but it's wonderful.
It's awesome being on your show. I admire your work.
I admire you both, and I admire the work, and I mean that sincerely. We always don't get a chance to meet one another and tell one another how much we appreciate each other. But Diversity Inc. has always been a staple for me, and always a source for me when I'm sharing news and information with my audience. DiversityInc.com. Some of y'all work for companies. Do they deserve a look, or can they pass scrutiny and muster? Some of y'all need to think about that too, and raise some of those questions. So go to DiversityInc.com. The top 50 released on on May 1st. So we'll see that up on the website
Exactly.
when it happens, and we'll look forward to that. And we'll get back together and do some other things
Thank
as well,
you.
for sure.
Love to do it.
Count on that. Like I said, we get spinoffs around here, so don't be surprised. Good things will happen. All right, folks, we appreciate you joining us. We're thankful to DiversityInc.com, the CEO and the COO, Luke Visconti, the CEO, and Carolynn Johnson, the COO. Where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to?
Rutgers.
You went to Rutgers? Okay. And did you?
Same here.
Say both. Oh, you Rutgers folks, huh? Okay. All right. We appreciate you both. Thank you all. Get ready for impeachment. This is MIP.
Thank you.
That was awesome.